Somewhere in your garage right now, there is a tool that rust has been slowly destroying. A wrench, a set of bolts, a garden implement, a set of hinges on a door you keep meaning to fix. You have looked at it and thought about buying a new one. Or you have looked at the rust remover products lining the hardware store shelf, priced at $15, $20, $30 a bottle, and decided to deal with it later. What nobody in that hardware store will ever tell you is that the solution has been sitting in your kitchen cabinet the entire time. White distilled vinegar combined with table salt removes rust completely from steel, iron, aluminum, and chrome. It restores tools to near factory condition overnight. It costs under $1 for a full treatment. And the $15 billion metal treatment industry has spent decades making sure you never once connected those two facts. They did not suppress this because it fails. A method used by Victorian railway engineers, World War II field mechanics, and generations of rural tradespeople before commercial rust removers ever existed cannot be called a failure. They suppressed it because it works too completely and costs too little to generate the repeat revenue that an industry built on scheduled maintenance and product replacement requires. This is the story of acetic acid, the compound in your kitchen vinegar that has been dissolving rust since before the concept of a hardware store existed. And the industry that quietly made sure it stayed off every product label and out of every home maintenance guide written in the last 60 years. Welcome to the Blueprint Secrets. This is where we open what the home improvement industry sealed shut. Let me take you back to where this particular story begins, not in a research lab, in a rail yard. The year is 1847, Northern England. The Industrial Revolution is moving iron and steel across Britain at a pace the world has never seen. Railway maintenance depots are working around the clock, keeping locomotives, track fittings, and coupling hardware serviceable through brutal northern winters. Rust is a constant and expensive enemy. Commercial chemical treatments do not exist yet. What the depot engineers have instead is observation, patience, and access to the same household materials every family in England keeps in their larder. A maintenance foreman named Thomas Headley documents in his workshop ledger a method his team has been refining for 3 years. Rusty iron components soaked overnight in a solution of malt vinegar and coarse salt emerge the following morning with the rust dissolved cleanly from the surface. The underlying metal is undamaged. The parts function as new. The cost is negligible. Headley's ledger, preserved in the Bradford Industrial Museum archive, records the formula with the same matter-of-fact tone he uses to document coal deliveries and wheel replacements. To him and his crew, it was not a discovery. It was simply what you did when metal rusted and you needed it functional by morning. The same knowledge appears independently across dozens of documented sources throughout the 19th century. American blacksmiths recorded vinegar baths for rusted iron tools in trade journals from the 1860s. German machinists published the method in technical handbooks circulated through the engineering trades before 1880. Japanese metalworkers used rice vinegar solutions for cleaning and restoring iron implements, with a tradition stretching back centuries before Western contact. Every metalworking culture that dealt with rust in a pre-chemical era arrived at the same compound through the same process of careful observation. Then, in 1921, a Philadelphia chemist named Howard Cross filed a patent for a phosphoric acid-based rust converter formulated for industrial application. Within a decade, commercial rust treatment products were appearing on hardware store shelves across America and Europe. By 1950, the chemistry industry had successfully repositioned rust removal from a household skill anyone could perform with kitchen materials into a technical problem, requiring a specialized commercial solution. The foreman's vinegar bath did not disappear because phosphoric acid worked better. It disappeared because phosphoric acid could be bottled, branded, patented, and sold at 40 times the cost of a gallon of vinegar. Now let me show you precisely what the science says, because this is where the numbers become impossible to argue with. Rust is iron oxide, the compound formed when iron reacts with oxygen and moisture over time. Its chemical formula is Fe2O3. Acetic acid, the active compound in white distilled vinegar, reacts with iron oxide through a straightforward acid-base chemical reaction. The acetic acid donates hydrogen ions that break apart the iron oxide molecules, converting them into iron acetate and water. Iron acetate is water-soluble and washes away cleanly. The underlying iron or steel beneath is left exposed, undamaged, and fully functional. The salt accelerates this process through electrochemical action. Sodium chloride dissolved in the acidic vinegar solution increases the electrical conductivity of the liquid, which speeds the ion exchange at the rust surface. The combination of acetic acid and sodium chloride produces a working solution that penetrates rust more aggressively and more completely than either compound alone. This is not theory. This is the same electrochemical principle behind every commercial rust treatment product on that hardware store shelf, including the ones that cost $25 a bottle. The difference is that those bottles contain synthetic acids, proprietary carrier chemicals, and markup built across multiple layers of manufacturing, distribution, and retail margin. Your vinegar and salt achieve the same fundamental chemical reaction for under $1. A study conducted by the Materials Performance Journal tested white vinegar against 3 commercial rust removal products on standardized iron test plates with identical rust coverage. After a 12-hour soak, the vinegar solution removed 94% of rust by surface area. The commercial products averaged 96 to 98% removal, a difference of 2 to 4 percentage points, for a price difference of roughly 2,000%. The researchers noted that extended soak time with the vinegar solution, 18 to 24 hours rather than 12, brought removal rates to within 1% of the commercial alternatives across all test plates. The global metal treatment and rust removal market is valued at approximately $15 billion annually. The dominant products in this market, brands sold in every hardware chain across every developed country, are formulated around phosphoric acid, oxalic acid, or hydrofluoric acid combined with proprietary surfactants and stabilizing agents. Every one of these products requires protective gloves during application. Several require respiratory protection in enclosed spaces. All of them require you to return to the store when the bottle runs out, which for active users happens several times per year. White distilled vinegar requires no protective equipment beyond basic common sense. It produces no fumes that require ventilation. It is safe on skin contact. It costs between $2 and $4 per gallon at any grocery store. A single gallon treats dozens of rust removal jobs before it needs replacing. You cannot build a $15 billion industry on a product that costs $3 and comes from a grocery aisle rather than a hardware supply chain. So the industry built its market around products that require specialized retail distribution, carry safety classifications that imply professional-grade chemistry, and run out fast enough to maintain purchase frequency. The knowledge about vinegar and salt did not vanish from the world. It retreated into the margins, into old workshop manuals that nobody digitized, into the advice of older tradespeople who learned from someone whose grandfather kept a vinegar barrel in the workshop, into online forums populated by restoration hobbyists who stumbled onto the method by accident and could not believe how well it worked. The information was always there. It simply stopped being taught. I want to be straightforward about what this method does and does not do, because the limitation matters for setting correct expectations. Vinegar and salt dissolves rust chemically but does not provide any protective coating on the bare metal it exposes. Once the rust is removed and the metal surface is clean, you must apply a rust-inhibiting primer, oil, or protective coating within a few hours. Bare steel exposed to air after rust removal will begin oxidizing again almost immediately in humid conditions. The removal is complete and real. The protection step is on you, and it takes 5 minutes with any spray primer or light machine oil. Skip that step, and the rust will return within days. Additionally, for extreme rust cases where the metal has been deeply pitted over many years, the vinegar method removes all rust but cannot restore metal that has already been eaten away by oxidation. What was rust becomes clean, empty space. The method restores the remaining sound metal to full function. It cannot replace what is already gone. For most household tools, hardware, and fixtures, where the rust is surface level rather than structural, this distinction rarely matters in practice. Here is exactly what to do this weekend with tools and hardware you already own. Find a container large enough to fully submerge the rusted item. A plastic storage bin, a bucket, a large pot you no longer use for food. Pour in enough white distilled vinegar to fully cover the item. Add 2 tablespoons of table salt per quart of vinegar and stir until dissolved. Submerge the rusted item completely. If it floats, weight it down with a stone or another heavy object. Cover the container loosely to slow evaporation. Leave it for a minimum of 12 hours. For heavy rust, leave it for 18 to 24 hours. Do not exceed 30 hours on thin or fine metal items, as extended acid exposure can begin to etch the base metal surface beneath the rust layer. After soaking, remove the item and scrub with a stiff wire brush or steel wool. The rust will come away easily. You are not grinding through it, but simply removing what the acid has already chemically loosened and dissolved from the surface. Rinse thoroughly with clean water to remove all acid residue. Dry the item completely and immediately using a cloth and then a heat source if available. A hairdryer works well. Do not allow the bare metal to air dry slowly, as surface oxidation begins within minutes on exposed steel and humid air. Apply a protective coating immediately after drying. A light coat of machine oil, a WD-40, linseed oil, or any spray primer creates a barrier between the clean metal and the atmosphere. This step takes 3 minutes and determines whether the results last for years or for days. A homeowner in Michigan used this method on a complete set of garden tools that had spent 2 winters in a leaking shed. Shovels, pruning shears, a cultivator, and a set of trowels, all heavily rusted. Total soaking time across 2 batches was 20 hours. Total cost of the vinegar and salt was $4.30. Every tool came out clean to bare metal. He oiled them, stored them properly, and reported they were still in full working condition 2 full years later. He had been quoted $180 to replace the set at a garden center. The $4.30 made that quote unnecessary. Think about what this really means for the average homeowner. Every garage in every suburb contains rusted tools, rusted hardware, rusted fasteners, rusted brackets. The standard response is replacement. The home improvement industry depends on that response. New tools, new hinges, new bolts, new implements purchased seasonally and replaced on a cycle that the industry designs into the product through material choices, storage instructions, and the complete absence of any mention of restoration as an alternative to purchase. The Victorian railway foreman, who wrote the vinegar formula into his workshop ledger in 1847, understood something the modern hardware store aisle is architecturally designed to make you forget. Metal does not need to be replaced when it rusts. It needs to be restored. The chemistry that accomplishes that restoration costs less than a cup of coffee and has been sitting in your kitchen since the last time you bought groceries. This knowledge did not disappear because it stopped working. Acetic acid reacts with iron oxide exactly as it always has and always will. The electrochemistry does not change with fashion or with marketing cycles. What changed was who controlled the information channels through which home maintenance knowledge reached ordinary people. When hardware chains replaced local ironmongers, when YouTube channels replaced workshop apprenticeships, when product manuals replaced trade knowledge passed between generations, the economic incentive to teach people the cheap solution evaporated entirely. The gallon of white vinegar on your grocery store shelf costs the same today as it did 20 years ago. The rust remover spray at the hardware store costs more every year. The gap between those two prices is not chemistry. It is 60 years of deliberate misdirection, and it ends the moment you connect what you just learned to the rusted tools sitting in your garage right now. If this vault opens something for you today, subscribe and share it with someone who has been buying replacement tools they never needed to replace. Every person who learns this becomes one less customer walking back to that hardware shelf. The next vault opens soon. What is inside weighs even heavier.